Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday after a long week, and we're getting ready for the free agent frenzy on Monday. We'll be doing a show of at least a couple hours. Not sure if it's starting at 11 or 12, but stay tuned to Hockey Buzz. We will let you know. Should have a full crew on board with Ack dropping in and out to check on some messages and things that he gets from his sources. Peter, we'll start with, and Ack will be joining us in a few minutes. We'll start with the news, and it's not confirmed yet, and I don't believe it can be until July 1st because he's an RFA, although no, he's their property. So they could do it at any time. But Larry Brooks, in his column this morning in the New York Post, reported that the Rangers and Jacob Trouba are close on a long-term extension. And, after the trade, you pretty much expected that he wasn't going to go someplace unless it was someplace he really wanted to sign long-term. And the report is either 6 or 7 years at between, I think it was $7.5 to $8 million. Yeah. So that's something that the Jets were just not going to be able to do. So, I mean, I'm not sure how you feel about this, but I sort of mixed about it because I think he's getting what he probably was going to get on the open market 1 year away from unrestricted free agency. This is about what I think he would have gotten as a free agent, maybe a little more. But what do you think?
I think it's in the ballpark. I do think it's a little bit of an overpayment. And knowing that he wanted to be there, you would think the Rangers could have maybe, if this comes to fruition at this level, extracted a little bit of a discount on that, because I don't think it is a discount in any way, shape, or form. But then again, we're dealing with a Kurt Overhart client, and he goes to the wall and then climbs over it and goes up the other side for his client. So, they made it clear, and they had all the cards in their hand. Signs for 1 year. He'll go wherever best fits him. So, they were a little handcuffed. I don't think the Jets were ever wanting to pay him this much until they saw him do what he did last year consistently. And that was probably always going to be the case, no matter whether he wanted to be there or not. So at this point, I think if this is where it's signed and he'd given them the option of, I want to be here, but it's going to cost this much, they probably would have explored it otherwise. This thing is too rich for their blood, given that they're paying Bufflin that basic amount for another 2 years. They have Josh Morrissey coming up after next season. I think between Morrissey and Trouba, they probably double down on Morrissey at that level as opposed to Trouba.
Yeah, and I know that Brian Burke on the Hockey Central show thought that this was a bit of an overpayment, and I don't agree with his assessment, though. He said that he thought Trouba was more of a second pairing defenseman. I think he's a top pairing defenseman, and he said that he wasn't an offensive defenseman. Well, he scored over 50 points this year, so I don't. That might be a career best.
He proved that the offense was there this year. Right. And that was the one thing that was always the question about him.
Right.
And Jacob Trouba is not a top pairing defenseman on maybe 5 teams in the NHL simply because of who they have. And you know what? I'd like Brian Burke to name me the other 26 teams that he wouldn't be on. Like, name me any more than that.
Yeah,
because there's not many.
He'd definitely be on Toronto's. I know that for sure.
Yeah, on Toronto. He'd maybe Calgary, San Jose, Carolina.
Yeah.
Who else?
St. Louis, maybe Boston.
St. Louis, Boston.
Yeah, maybe 5, maybe 6 or 7 teams. Ironically, the teams that probably made it to at least the quarterfinals, because it seemed to me that all the teams that had really good defenses advanced. I mean, Dallas with Heiskanen and Klingberg and that group that they have. God, I'm drawing a blank on the kid who played 30 minutes a game, or almost 30 minutes a game during the play. Not Honka, but there was another one. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, there not many teams where I think Trouba isn't a top pairing guy, but I think Burke was just saying that I think Burke's assessment was like a 2 years ago assessment that he wasn't a big offensive guy. I don't think he's a point guy in the power play, but on the Rangers, he's not going to have to be. If they have Shattenkirk and guys like Fox, who might be that type of defenseman, then he's going to. I think he's going to settle in as the top pairing guy, the guy who will hit, the guy who will eat 25 minutes a night. And for those guys, paying them over $7 million is par for the course.
Yeah. I mean, he's gonna cost you. That's true. I mean, it's a lot of money to pay for a guy who proved he had the complete game for one season. So maybe he does. That's all it is. And you've got, and I'm not saying he shouldn't get that money. I'm just saying it's a lot of money to pay for that. And that's the bet. Doesn't mean it's a bad bet. That's just the bet.
Right. And I'll stick with some signings here until Eck gets on board. And again, there's a Winnipeg connection here. And I think there's a lot to read into this. And it's a minor signing, but, just it's not going to be all Toronto all the time. But I thought that this was very interesting that the Leafs re-up Michael Hutchinson for a year at $700,000 on a one-way contract. To my mind, Peter, this spells the end of Garrett Sparks in Toronto. I think Hutchinson has been signed as the backup for Frederik Andersen. At $700,000 is a cheap number too. It's a guy who's capable of playing 20 to 25 games in the NHL, which is what the Leafs need at least to a backup to play to take a little bit of the burden off of Andersen. And when he played 5 games in late December and early January, I thought Hutchinson played pretty well. And we know that there's no confidence in Garrett Sparks since they pulled him off the roster for the playoffs and put Hutchinson in as the backup. So you've had experience with Hutchinson as a backup. I think he's a capable guy.
I think he's a capable guy. I think the thing that the Leafs need to do is let him embrace some stability in his life. He's been to Florida. He's been back. He's been jettisoned from the Jets. The ending with the Jets was a little up and down. He was lightening it up in the AHL, playing with Comrie, having incredible, he was like less than 2 goals against the game, like a .930 save percentage. Really good. And he came up and it just wasn't working for him when he got drawn back up into Winnipeg. And there may have been a little bit of begrudginess because he wanted a chance to play someplace else and they wouldn't trade him. So he signs a 1-year deal with Florida last year. He ends up in Toronto. Hopefully this stabilizes some things. He's got, he's married with a lady here in Winnipeg. That's a nice hop, skip, and a jump for his personal life for her.
Direct flight to Canada.
And she's got a business here that's quite well known. Hopefully for him, he sort of settles into this and says, okay, this is where my opportunity is, and embraces it, and, gets the trust of Mike Babcock and is used in a way that he can build a little bit of a resume for himself to finish out his career.
Yeah, and if you look at the situation right now with the Leafs in terms of their goaltending, Anderson's the number one. Sparks did not do well last year. I think that the organization has lost confidence in him, and a couple of weeks ago it was reported that they were looking essentially to trade him off, to give him a second chance, because I really don't think Babcock is going to give Sparks an opportunity next year. I think with Hutchinson in the fold, if it's a question between Hutchinson and Sparks, they're gonna go with Hutchinson, and Sparks could get claimed on waivers by somebody, but I think that maybe a 25-year-old goaltender who won a Calder Cup would get some interest, just to not to dump his contract, but maybe you get a low round pick. But they have a young goaltender in Joseph Woll, who was the Team USA goaltender that won a World Junior a couple years ago. Played 3 years at Boston College. He's going to need to play at least a year, maybe 2 years in the American Hockey League to be ready for the NHL. Another prospect in Ian Scott, who played for Team Canada at the World Junior this year. So they have 2 prospects, and those prospects need to play as much as possible. So there's really going to be no room for Sparks, if he gets through waivers, to play in the American Hockey League or even in the ECHL. So that's why I think he'll end up being traded. A couple other things while we wait for Eck to get here. There are reports that Cam Talbot, who was the starter for Edmonton, then gets traded to Philadelphia as the presumed future backup for Carter Hart, but then doesn't play. And now Brian Elliott's been signed with the Flyers. That Cam Talbot is going to go to Calgary. And Peter, the thing that's interesting here is 1-year contract, not multi-year. So is this insurance against David Rittich that they're not sure that he's a number one and they have somebody who they think could be the number one?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. They were letting Mike Smith go. That was a no one. Yeah. And obviously so. I think Mike Smith can be something, but I don't think they're ready to basically switch roles in Calgary between Rittich and Smith in terms of one. Like, I just don't think that relationship was going to work for Mike Smith probably. So you bring in Cam Talbot. He gets to go back to the Battle of Alberta, stick it to the team that gave up on him, and signed a guy who played 30 games to a $4 million a year deal. And what better motivation for a guy when you know you're going to see the Oilers 6 times a season?
Sure.
And you're right down the road in a far better organized club, and you're going to have an opportunity to maybe potentially be the number one guy or work in a 1A 1B scenario. There's no reason why he couldn't at least guarantee himself 30 games, and that might have been a scenario that he looked at and said, if I'm going to get another deal, I need to go into Calgary, a place with a very good defense, play my lights out, and earn my next deal. And why not do it with a team that's solid as opposed to trying to backstop a disaster, which is what he could have been doing in a number of places.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is sort of a no lose for Calgary because I think low risk. I mean, I don't know what the cap figure would be, but I'm assuming it's going to be in the neighborhood of maybe 2.5, something, maybe even something lower than that. If it's low risk, ideally you go with a 1A 1B scenario as you're talking about. Maybe Talbot steals the job. Maybe they go with him because he's more experienced. We'll have to let that play out, but it's a good fallback because Smith played well in the playoffs, but I don't think he played well enough to instill any confidence that he'd be the goalie going forward next year. And now I think he's 37 years old. He's probably looking either at, taking a 1-year contract as a backup somewhere or retirement. So a good move by Calgary. We'll see what the salary is. Now, a couple hours ago, there was a trade made between, or actually in the last hour, made between the Washington Capitals and the Colorado Avalanche. The Capitals trade 2 draft picks in the 2020 draft, a 2nd and 3rd round pick, and Scott Kosmachuk to that's what the Capitals got. What the Avalanche got is Andre Burakovsky, who's been rumored to be traded for at least a year, maybe a couple years. He's a restricted free agent. Washington is really tight up against the cap, so he probably would have cost them too much to sign to a new deal. I like Burakovsky, Peter. I thought he played well when in the Capitals Cup run. And, he's a good young player. And if you look at the Avalanche, they basically have nobody signed except for Landeskog, Eric Johnson, McKinnon, and a few others. They're almost a clean slate.
And now you add Burakovsky, who's a solid center, can, on some teams to be a second line center. And he's got, great. The Central just gets more packed with talent and it just goes on and on. You look at the price for him and you go, and I haven't looked at anything in terms of numbers, points, you name it, underlying numbers, anything. I haven't looked. I'm just shooting right from the hip here with no idea. But you look at what Vancouver gave up for JT Miller and you go, wow, is Burakovsky that much worse? And and this is what he got. Like, you kind of, again, we go back to that deal on draft day,
right?
And we were all there for, and we're like, wow, it's an interesting move, Benning. And then you see this, and you're like, did this just sort of basically make him, sort of hammer home the fact that he overpaid for Miller? Maybe.
Yeah, we touched on the Trouba rumored signing and the Burakovsky trade that happened in the last hour, going to Colorado. So I've got the chat open here for later on for some questions, but take over if you want.
1 second.
You turn up your volume a little bit.
Yeah, hold on. I'll get you.
Okay.
Hold on. literally, guys, just moved into this. This is my bunker office for the next 4 days, and we've got horrible traffic getting down here to the beach place. So I am very discombobulated right now. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Well,
give me 1 second.
Yeah, no problem. Peter, the thing is with this trade, I mean, it doesn't affect what Colorado is going to have to do with Ranton. And I mean, if we think that, Burakovsky is probably going to end up with a bridge deal, probably around $3.5 million. That seems to be the range for his type of player. He's played pretty well, but he hasn't had a monstrous season that he's going to earn a big long-term contract with big money, which is, that makes sense with Colorado. They have to have, I think they're failing last year. Now, they won in the first round, but they're failing in terms of going deeper was the fact that they didn't have the offensive depth, and they really need, other than that big line, other than Landeskog, McKinnon, and Rantanen, and they need support for those players. And Burakovsky would be a fine second, third line guy for that team.
Yeah, he will. And Burakovsky has a ton of upside. And now you throw him with some of that dynamic talent in Colorado that's younger, maybe not the same veteran pedigree that you have in Washington, right, but he's got some experience. I don't see a downside for Colorado in this, that's for sure. It's certainly something that, they've got the cap space. Now they have 28 contracts in the whole system, 28 out of 50.
Yeah, that's they're literally a clean slate.
Like, if you were going to look at a model on how to rebuild, you figure out where Joe Sakic started and what he's done. That's your model, because however he's done it, it's going to pay dividends and down the line. And I think probably there's some areas of Colorado that, just to go on and talk about them, they've got to shore up their defense a little bit, and it remains to be seen if Barrie's still going to be an Avalanche, next season or after that.
Right.
But they've got a little bit of issues with between the pipes. I think they've got to solidify that in some regard. Find that guy who's going to be that true number one that they can build around for years, and we'll see what happens.
Okay. How's the sound? Does it sound okay now, guys? Sorry.
Yeah. We can hear you.
Canucks have been rumored to be after him since the last season, and it never pulled the trigger.
Yeah.
Good. All right, guys. Sorry. So yes, let's my thoughts on Trouba real fast. This sounds right to me. It sounds like a deal that makes sense to me, actually.
Yeah,
I think Trouba
wise and term wise. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's and what I was a little surprised at was that the Rangers knew. The Rangers must have known that he was going to sign there. Put it that way, to make the trade. I mean, it's one of those situations where they didn't talk to him beforehand, but they must have talked to him a little bit to make this happen.
Or talk to his agent.
Yeah, or talk to his agent. I expected him to play a little. I expect this to go into the season for a little bit. I really didn't think they were going to sign it right away. They have to sign it. I mean, he's an RFA, so they've got to sign it. But I expected to go into the preseason before he would play. But
they made the qualifying offer to protect themselves. So
yeah, they did that. They did what they had to do. But I think it's what Trouba has wanted, right, for a very long time. So
So now the question is whether there'll be a corresponding move with the Rangers. I mean, the Rangers are still in that rebuild. They got a lot of young players, but there has been speculation that if they went after a guy like Karlsson and they had to spend $10 million on Erik Karlsson, that maybe Shattenkirk would get moved out. Shattenkirk's got 2 years left in his contract. And, I don't think Trouba's a point guy in the power play. So I think Shattenkirk still has a role there. So maybe they keep him. Maybe because they got a Trouba for cheaper than what they would have had to pay Karlsson. They keep Shattenkirk and he's got a no move. So he's not going to go any place he doesn't want to go, but maybe they keep him and hope that he has a bounce back year.
I think it depends on what they're doing with Panarin, right? It depends if they're in the Panarin thing or not, because they're going to need money if they're in the Panarin thing. And I believe that they are in the Panarin thing. So it's whether or not they actually make that move. That's the question. I think that the question that I think is most interesting about Trouba is this an RFA defenseman? Does this set the tone at all for Werenski, Provorov? The difference, of course, is Trouba's an older RFA, older RFA defenseman, right? So the other guys are all coming off of their entry levels. So I've heard it doesn't. Like I talked to an agent. I'm like, thank God, maybe this sets the whole tone. And they said no. They said no, it doesn't set the tone. So we really don't know yet.
He's 1 year away from UFA, and Werenski and
right. So this had to be. This had to be higher, I think. And I think that, I do think that this is not.
He had all the leverage. He got
all the leverage.
There.
I don't think this is that far off of where those guys will be.
No.
I think that this is probably where they'll end up, somewhere in the $7.5 to $8 million range.
On a 5 or on a 6 or 7 year deal.
Yeah, like a 6 year deal, 5 to 6 years. Yeah. Not like, I doubt any of them go to 8 years. If anyone does, it would be McAvoy probably. But besides McAvoy, because he's obviously one of the key building blocks for this Boston Bruins team.
And they'll want to get term on a defenseman because that's what they do. I mean, by getting term, even if they're paying him say $8 million, like 8 times 8, it's going to be a bargain down the road because once they have all their other big guys, Bergeron, Marchand, Pasternak, all locked up, all under $7 million. So they get McAvoy locked up. They got that core group locked up for the next 4 or 5 years. Right.
And I did something on the rumor chart that people had questions about. So I wanted to go into that a little bit for a second. I'm going to bring it up here so everyone can see it.
While you're bringing it up, let me just mention this. The Carolina Hurricanes continue to confound. They and their Calder Cup winning head coach Mike Vellucci have agreed to part ways. You would think that the guy wins the Calder Cup and you would re-up him and you would give him a raise. And this organization has dumped him basically. I don't get what Dundon is doing. I think it's disgraceful, really.
He is trying to he is of the belief, okay. I talked to somebody, I remember that interviewed for that job, and he interviewed for the GM job there, and he was told that you have to take what Chaika is making, which is when we found out that Chaika is making like $250,000, which is way less than anybody I think expected him to be making in Phoenix, right? Like he's a young guy for sure, but $250,000 for a general manager in the NHL. Most assistant GMs are making twice that. That $500,000 is about your standard assistant GM rate. So, so this GM that I knew that was talking to him was like, no, I'm not going to take $250,000. Actually, I'm making more than that now in my other job in hockey. So why would I do that, right, in the first place? So this is obvious, but he has the belief that he's like, listen, I can get people to do almost as good a job for less money, and that's what he's thinking. So he's going to go about that he did it with the goalie coach apparently too, who left there a little bit, less ceremoniously, but left there because of money, from what I was told. And and now, like you said, a highly successful guy in the AHL, and
a guy who's on a short list for a lot of teams and
the weird thing about this is, think about this for a second. They did well this year, Carolina. Carolina did well. They had a very good year. They made the playoffs. They won a round in the playoffs. They were. What was that?
They won two. They got to the conference final. They won 2.
Right. They won 2 rounds. I'm sorry. They won 2 rounds in the playoffs. This is what is happening when the team did well. Okay. This is all. And the crazy thing that's the crazy thing to me. It's did he think this just happened, out of dumb luck, that all this occurred? Or does he think, does he realize that there's good people that made this happen?
Well, and to that point, I mean, their AHL team, which is filled with a lot of young prospects who are probably going to come up to the Hurricanes in the next year or two.
Yeah,
they had a lot of success. I watched them beat the Marlies in the Eastern Conference Final, the Calder Cup. They had a lot of good young players. They just in the last week they traded Sorella, who was a Ranger draft pick, who's going to probably be in the NHL. He was part of the deal with Calvin DeHaan, and they traded Nicolas Roy in a deal yesterday. Two of their better young players.
Yeah,
and I think in the one deal they got nothing. They got nothing back. Forsling and Anton Forsberg. So they're trading good young players and getting not much back for them.
Yeah, and the other deal, they got a really risky Eric Haula, who's been hurt and has been up and down his career. He had a good year 2 years ago, but it was almost as if they were looking at it I don't know. I have no idea what he's doing, to be honest. And it's kind of it's either going to totally blow up in his face or it's going to like redefine the way teams do things, because it's completely, and I have it hard to believe, of course, it's going to redefine the way things do things, but it's
well, it's almost like anything that had a tinge of Ron Francis is being eliminated.
Anything that any tinge of anything in the NHL is being thrown out. It's not just Ron Francis. It's like anything that has to do with the NHL standards and norms in general, which I am usually a big fan of, by the way. Like, I like when teams go against the norm of the NHL. But I'm not for, guys who are underpaid and underappreciated being more underpaid and underappreciated. That's what I feel like's happening. Like, this assistant, this coach for Charlotte, the goalie coach, these guys were not making tons of money. And yet, here they are being turned away. The reality is, like, you have to, and then also, I mean, the fact he went to Don Waddell and said, I'm going to pay you for, either to be the president or the general manager, but not both. Don Waddell was really never paid to do both. He was paid to be the president of the team and ended up being the GM as well. Yeah. But it's not like his salary was suddenly doubled.
Dundon got a buy one get one free cute coupon.
Right, and he won, but that's what he wants out of everything right now, and it's just kind of crazy. I mean, I want to like this guy so badly. Like, I want to like a rebel with the NHL. I love that kind of stuff.
Well, Peter, the thing that's interesting is that this rumor that we heard in Vancouver about Aho being offered $6 million on an 8-year deal, everybody seems to think now that Aho is maybe the only guy who's going to get an offer sheet because they think there's an outside chance that Dundon won't match it.
Yeah.
Well, he's got,
but it's amazing how many people floated this out there and now backtracking on it.
Yeah, and well, this is the thing about that.
I can hear the beep, beep, beep.
Well, here's the thing about that rumor, Peter. I'll tell you a little bit of
backing up. Oops, got it wrong on that one.
A little inside baseball on that rumor, particularly, okay? Because, like I said, in my time doing this, there have been 3 people whom have really told me bad rumors in an attempt to like get me to say something that wasn't true at all. Who I don't talk to anymore at all. There are 3, and I talked to hundreds of people. There's 3. Okay, and one of them
besides Alexander Daig.
I don't know Alexander Daig. I don't know him at all. I don't know who that is. I know who Alexander Daig is, but I don't know who that is anyway. No, but who besides Alan Walsh, you should say. So this is there's 2 others. Okay, and this would be one of them. And because, and I am sure. And I can't, that the person who told me this was the one who told Kyprios this too, and told the other people, because it was the same thing that, this offer was not made by the Hurricanes. This is not a real, and this is the kind of thing that does kind of piss me off. This is a Canadian thing trying to make Dundon look more ridiculous. You don't have to try to make Dundon look ridiculous right now. You don't have to go out of your way. You don't have to exaggerate things here. You can just let him go on his own merits right now, because
let him stew in his own juices.
Yeah, this is one of them. Okay, this is definitely one of them. And there's no, so this is, to me, we don't know what Aho was offered. But I talked to somebody who confirmed to me very, very poignantly that never happened. Okay. That the 6-8 never happened, and that really was that the Hurricanes were really pissed off that was put out there by the Canadian media and myself. I got yelled at for it, because it's just like, so that was one of those rumors that just didn't exist. All right, so let me share something real quick, guys. In my rumor chart here, I'm gonna share this with you. I'm doing something I haven't done before, and I think it's kind of fun. So I want your opinions on it. Okay. Because there are so many things going on. I've decided to take players who are normally the rumor chart looks kind of like this. Let me stretch this out a little bit more for you guys. That normally looks more like this, right? So you can see the percentage of teams that people are going to go to. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to take the RFAs and put a percentage on how close I felt like they were to signing. Okay. So I earlier had Trouba on this list at 85%, he's done. I have Kachuk at 85%. I think that's close to being done. Besser at 75, Point at 75, Provorov at 25, Marner at 35. So this is how close I see these deals are getting done. That doesn't necessarily mean they won't get done at all. I'm just saying, based on what I've heard now, the distances between the sides.
Before a particular date. I mean,
yeah. Let's say I would say, yeah, that's a good point. This is before July 1st right now.
Okay.
I would say.
Okay, that's
yeah, because it will change. Marner will change drastically after July 1st, and Provorov, probably won't change as much. But I've got other guys down here too. I went into Konechny, Ryan Murray at 90%. That's pretty close to being done, I heard.
yeah.
McAvoy 75, Werenski's 55. So Rantanen at 80. So there are some people that I feel pretty close. They're getting pretty close to whom I'm talking to. Now, that being said, we still haven't yet to see anything along the lines of, somebody stepping up and doing this actually. So one person has to sign first and has to set the whole table on it. But
well, the interesting thing that came out today, just listening to some of the the people in the know, like Elliot Friedman or Burke or other Bob McKenzie or LeBrun, is that there is a general feeling now that these RFAs are going to go longer. That this is not going to be that they're going to follow the William Nylander model. And the thing is, for some of them, that makes sense. For some of them, like Rantanen or maybe Aho looking to get and their teams having a lot of cap space, they could hold out. They could hold out through training camp. They could go all the way to December 1st, like Nylander did. A situation like Marner, if that happens, if he goes into the regular season next season, he's sitting out the year because the Leafs, remember, Nylander's contract, the first year was front loaded. It was over $10 million. After the regular season starts, that would happen on Marner's contract, and the Leafs are so tight up against the cap that if Marner went into the season, I don't think they could fit him under the cap with a front loaded first year. So that for him and a guy like Braden Point, their windows are shorter. They can't go into the regular season and force their teams to pay them what they want.
Well, they can, but will they?
They can, but it's
you're right. But I don't think they're sitting back. And if I'm Marner's agent, I'm like saying, there's no way the Leafs are going to let that happen. There's no way the Leafs are going to let me sit out the whole season.
Well, they're not going to. The thing is, I mean, what has been and we know that things are going to be floated out in the media that are maybe trial balloons, and that happens in politics. It happens in sports. Elliot, and I'm not saying Elliot Friedman is floating out anything there, but I'm sure he got information from someone. The talk of a 2-year extension, a 2-year bridge at around $8 million per has come out in the last 24 hours. And if you think about it, with what is going on with the cap, the next year, the cap is probably going to stay relatively low in the last year of the CBA. And then the US TV contract and expansion money from Seattle comes in. They expect the cap to go up big time 2 years from now. If he signed a 2-year deal, and $8 million would be the highest bridge deal in the history of the league. Yeah. Then the money would be there to sign him to a longer term extension. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but I think it's a possibility, and it might be.
We've seen things like that happen before in situations like this.
Sure.
And it's not out of it. Depends. I think a lot depends on what happens with Nylander and Zaitsev. Like I wrote today, the fact that both of those guys are getting these big bonuses on July 1st is holding up, is a bit of the, hold up of the domino effect that we want to see in the trades. Like we are going to see.
I think there's that on there.
If both of those guys didn't have that going on right now, we would be seeing 10 trades a day versus 2.
There are some people who think a Zaitsev deal is already done, and they're just waiting.
I think both might already be done. I wouldn't be shocked at all if a Nylander deal wasn't already done. And if that's the case, then the Leafs know what the Leafs have their money to do what they want to do.
The Leafs have to clear money. They have $5.9 million in cap space right now. They have options,
and that's without putting Nathan Horton on LTIR. So more moves.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly.
You do $8 million, you've got to make space.
Yeah, you still have to make space at $8 million, and I think that's more what he's worth, actually. Marner, I think he's more of an $8 or $9 million player than an $11 million player. But that's what I'm going to be very interested in seeing how that plays out. Now, we also wanted to talk a little bit about Robin Lehner here, because we talked yesterday, and I've been talking for a while about the fact that I don't think he's going back to the Islanders, and I think that they pretty much have decided not to. The really fascinating thing. So now Arthur Staples came out and said the same thing. Arthur is way more connected than I am to the Islanders, so he would know, for sure. I just have other sources telling me things like, and my Lou Whisperer qualities, which I feel very proud of. I feel like he's not coming back. But the one thing I'll say about my Lou Whisperer qualities is that if he's not coming back, Lou has something else up his sleeves, because Lou does not let the goalie position hang out there. So there's something that he knows. He knows whether that's Bobrovsky, which I don't think it is, right, but whether it's Varlamov, whether it's Cam Talbot, or whether it's something else that he really believes in. Like, remember when he
Talbot.
Well, it's not Talbot, because there's reports out of Calgary he's going to sign a 1-year deal with the Flames. So it's
yeah, I've been writing about that too. Calgary, bringing in Talbot and Maroon in their attempt to put together the 2012 Edmonton Oilers. The Flames want to do that. So yeah, no, I think that the what I've really heard, though, I mean, Talbot is not signed yet. I think Calgary is where he's going to go, but it's Varlamov. Is it, I don't know. Is it somebody else? Is it Mike Smith? Who does Lou think is the guy there is the question, because he knows who the guy is. It's not Grice, it's not going to be Thomas Grice. It's somebody else. If it's not Leonard, is it Mrazek? I don't know. I don't think it's Mrazek. I would really be surprised.
I mean, I know I've been waved off on this one a couple times, but I keep putting it together. A goalie who needs a change of scenery, who Lou acquired before. I keep thinking there's a chance they trade for Corey Snyder. They'd probably get him for nothing, for next to nothing. They'd probably get the Devils to retain.
Oh, they could get him for next to nothing, but the Devils and Islanders making that deal would be really hard to imagine.
I know, and
not to say it's impossible. I mean, it would have to be Lou would have to really, 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 really feel comfortable with Snyder, which I don't think he would. He wasn't.
No one should right now. That guy may have got the yips. Something's not right with Schneider.
Yes, but
there's no question about it. And and he played a little bit better last year, and he played a little bit better in the World Championships for sure for US, but still, that's just the World Championships. I think that there's something to miss there, but Lou knows it may very well be Varlamov, or check this name out. I heard this today. It could be Jonathan Quick. Okay, so if Lou wants to bring in Jonathan Quick, that's not a bad idea for the Islanders. Like, in my mind, it's like you can bring in a guy there who, Oilers. I mean, the Kings are rebuilding for sure.
Yeah, and they have a goalie of the future in Cal Peterson.
They do, and they like them. They like him a lot. But if you have a Jonathan Quick tandem, with Grace, that might be something that Lou prefers to Leonard, because I think the big thing about Leonard for Lou is he going to be able to win in the playoffs? Is he going to be able to win in the key moments? I
mean, he wasn't the problem in the second round against Carolina. The problem was they scored 5 goals in 4 games.
Oh yeah, no, he wasn't the problem, but he also wasn't the solution in the playoffs. Really, he was good. He was solid, and he deserved everything he got this year. But that a general manager and a coach just have a feeling on a guy, like where you can put Quick in. If that if you go to the playoffs with Jonathan Quick, you're in good shape. You would think that you have a guy who's definitely proven that he can pick up his game at different times. And if Jonathan Quick is healthy, of course, which is a big if, but still, that to me is something that I could see. The interesting thing about Leonard to me, though, I'm trying to get a point across, which I'm not doing very well, because like I said, I've been traveling in traffic for 2.5 hours. But my point that I'm trying to get across is that if Leonard is not coming back, look out, because something big is going to happen. Like, that is the case. He's not going to sit back. It's not just going to be him signing or trading for a Bernier or or some whatever he's going to do.
No. When it comes to goaltending, Lou always swings big and for the fences. He came into Toronto.
Yeah,
and he traded the first round pick that he got that the Leafs got in the Kessel deal to get Frederik Andersen. He believed in building from the goal out. So.
Exactly.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And with a team that just won the Jennings Trophy and a goalie that won the Vezina, who the year before was a disaster in Buffalo, you put a goaltender in there like if Varlamov, who can be spectacular at times, it might, he might have a great year there. So they have a number of options. The question is where Leonard goes if he doesn't go back to the Islanders. And I think you said that there was talk about Columbus.
Columbus, Carolina are the two that I've heard the most. The other one would be Calgary.
But if they sign Talbot, they're probably
if they sign Talbot, they're done.
Yeah.
But what about San Jose? That's another one I thought about.
Well, I mean, that's as a backup because unless you think unless they're not sold on Martin Jones and
I don't think they're sold on Martin Jones right now. I mean, I think that that would probably be like a 1-1A situation if they could, but that San Jose doesn't have the money to do that, obviously, and they're trying to get Pavelski through. Yeah. If they lose Pavelski, things could change in San Jose. But I think that until they lose Pavelski, I would bet that San Jose and the way Doug Wilson is doing things is he's assuming they're going to get Pavelski. It's not going to be easy, but he's assuming they're going to get him, and they're not going to have that money to spend. So if they don't have that money to spend, then it's a very different story.
Do you want to take some questions, Zach?
Sure, let's take some questions. That sounds great.
From Barticus1, who is going to fleece Vegas with their cap space problems? Will they be fleeced? Okay, I don't think they'll be fleeced, but their problem is they're up against the cap. They're probably trying to trade David Clarkson's contract. He's got a bonus like Zaitsev, like Nylander after July 1st, so that might have to wait until then. The other name that's real popular out there, and I can attest to this, is Colin Miller, the defenseman. I know there's a lot of interest in him, but I know Toronto is interested in him, but they have to move Zaitsev to open up the cap space to bring in another defenseman. So
right.
That probably
they're gonna which they're gonna have to do. So I think that I've heard another name too. Let me pull it up because it's in my little notes here. I'm just pulling it up. Like I say, I'm not organized yet down here in my office. Usually I'm way more organized than this. But the team that I heard, the player that I heard from Vegas that was available that people weren't talking about was, and this is kind of, an interesting one because you would think that this guy is for sure going to stay there, because he has had such a great time there. But there have been teams that have been trying to get Alex Tuch out of there.
Okay.
And I like Alex Tuch a lot. Like I would jump on him if I could completely. But
he's a big body. Yeah.
He's a big body. I think he's a really talented guy. There were Jonathan March or so rumors as well. I don't think that's going to happen, but
yeah,
they have when you look at their two lines they've got, they've got their big two lines. After that, pretty much they're going to have to move somebody else off of who's not going to be on those two big lines that's making some money. And Tuch is making 4.75.
Yeah, but he's signed for another 6 years. So that's
he's a big, but if you believe in him, and I honestly think he could be a bargain at 4.75 for another 6 years.
Sure.
So to me, that's not a bad one.
Okay, scanning here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Somebody asking me, Funky Cold Zadina asking me, how do I think the Leaf situation will play out? Marner, Nylander, Kadri, etc. I'll limit it to Marner. I think that. I think it's going to get done. I don't know if it's going to get done soon, but I don't think it's going to last till training camp. I think both sides want to get it done. I don't think there's going to be an offer sheet. I think it's all bluff and bluster.
I don't think there's going to be one.
Yeah, because honestly, I do not think that I love the commentators who are coming out there talking about what it would take for Marner to sign an offer sheet.
Hey, it gives us something to talk about. That's all I can say.
Yeah, is it a team? Is there a team out there that is going to offer Mitch Marner? Nick Kypreos today said somebody's going to have to offer Mitch Marner more than McDavid. More than McDavid, meaning over $12.5 million a year. So some team out there is going to offer Marner $13 million at how many years and give up 4 first-round picks.
That's just not worth it at all. There's no way
on the spot if he does it.
There's no way it's worth it. He's not, like I said before, if you were getting him at $8 million a year, it's not worth 4 first-round draft picks. The bottom line is that's like the Marner is not worth 4 first-round draft picks as a player.
The point here is if you're going to do that at $8 or $9 million is an offer sheet, you're doing it for some other reason to mess with the Leafs because the end game isn't there. So you're trying to pressure something else. Well, Kapanen and what's his face?
Johnson.
Janssen are signed. So what's your end game?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I just drawn a blank. Are signed. So what's your end game? What are you trying to do? The only other reason Marner signs an offer sheet that's somewhat affordable is that he somehow changed his mind. He wants to be gone and that relations are bad. And you take that risk, hoping that they won't match and go from there. In that case, request a trade. But this is all going to come to an end soon unless Marner decides he's doing the Nylander path. And I think that would be a dumb thing to do.
Yeah, I'm with you.
That's your risk. You taint yourself and you give up a year of production.
It's the whole thing is ridiculous because, like I said, I mean, he's a great player. He's a top line player. There's no question about it. He's not an $11 million player. He's not a $10 million player. He's not a $9 million player. He might, he's been $8+ million player in my mind. And that's where I am with Marner. I mean, he's got to prove more than that. Like if he wants to take if he takes a short deal like that, maybe by the time 2 years are up, he's proven that he's an $11 or $12 million player, and he takes that step into like Nathan McKinnon area. But he's not there. That's not where he is. He's just not that good. I mean, and that's nothing against him. He's a great player, but I feel like all these RFAs think they're the next best thing since sliced bread right now. And they're good. I mean, Provorov is good, but he's not that good. Like he's shown ups and downs. These are still so young. That's, like I said, the difference between Trouba and these guys. Trouba has shown in the NHL what he can do for a lot longer. These guys haven't. I mean, these guys have had 3 years, and that's just not enough to warrant that kind of money unless you are like a generational player like a McDavid or a Matthews, and these guys aren't. They just aren't.
In regards to our goaltender talk with the Islanders, Anthony Kennard asks, what about Jake Allen to the Islanders? Now, this might be sort of like what Toronto did with Patrick Marleau. Well, Patrick Marleau is going to be back, and then 24 hours later, he's traded. I heard St. Louis basically come out and say, oh, we're going to keep Jake Allen.
I've heard that too.
But the thing is, I don't know how you can keep Jake Allen and pay Bennington for $4.5 million on an extension, then you're spending $8 million on goaltending, and the goaltender who was the number one is not somebody that you probably trust. So I think if somebody offers something reasonable for Allen, that Allen will be going somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. But I don't think. I mean, I think Bennington at 4.5 is very, very hopeful. Like I think that's. He just won the Stanley Cup. Like Bennington is a tough contract to sign because you have no idea whether he's all that or not. And a lot of people are comparing that. Are you coming with the $4.5 million because they're comparing it to Matt Murray? I think that's where they're going with it, right? But Matt Murray's contract was a couple years ago, so you can put some inflation in there. I think Bennington's 5.5, and I don't think it's less than that, and nor do I think it should be. I mean, he did just win a Stanley Cup. There's no two ways about that. A couple of other questions here in the chat room that I saw. On the Predators, Jeremy Piper wants to know what happens. A couple questions about Matt Duchene visiting. What happens if Matt Duchene signs with Nashville? Is there any interest in Torres or Bonino out there? I honestly have heard
Bonino.
I've heard some stuff about Torres today that I didn't expect, that there are some people who are interested. I didn't think that contract was movable at all. I still don't, but it's more movable than I thought it was. Just because I talked to somebody today who says that he still does have his believers out there.
I mean, remember there was talk about Buffalo having interest in Turris, but it was conditional on Nashville retaining some salary, similar to how Nashville would have had to retain salary on Subban to get a deal done with teams like Toronto and Vancouver. I don't know if Poyle wants to retain a couple $1 million, but he might have to.
I think it's very different with Torres, where I think you do have to. I think that Subban is still Subban. He's still PK Subban. He's $9 million, but he's still PK Subban. He brings a lot to your team. He's still a top 2 defender. He's going to sell enough jerseys to pay for that extra $3 million, whatever he's going to do. That's going to happen with PK. It's like you're fine with PK Subban. But Torres, they know they're going to have to keep money. It's a matter of whether they can get rid of him and keep as little as they possibly can. I don't think, though, and again I've said this, that Duchene is going to end up in Nashville. I just don't. And so Jeremy also asked, who else are they interested in? And I do believe, again, I've said this before, I do think that Nylander is to Nashville is a real serious rumor.
It would have to be, because it would have to be a 2-for-2, because the aim of the Leafs in any deal that would involve Nylander or Kadri, you would have to be getting a top 4 defenseman back. And
Right.
after trading Subban, I can't see Nashville trading an Ellis, or they're not. I don't think they're trading Yossi. I don't think they're trading Ekholm. I think it would be Ellis that would be the target.
I think Ellis is a serious possibility.
But I think that Nashville would have to get a defenseman back. Maybe that would be Zaitsev. But I think it could be.
Or they don't, because Nashville does have a really good stable of young defensemen, so they might think they're okay, or they might think they can sign somebody, a $2 million guy or something like that. They're looking for like a 5-6 defenseman back, not like a 1-2. But Ellis would be a great fit in Toronto.
Ellis would likely be on the top pairing in Toronto with Morgan Riley. He's a right-hand shot. He can play the power play. He's got a big shot.
But he was very disappointing for the Predators last year. After really like his stars shining brightly on their Stanley Cup run, where Ellis was just the guy, like he was amazing during that run.
He sort of fits the MO of the Dubas run Maple Leafs. He's a smaller player, very quick, good hockey IQ. That they like that type of player. So, but it would be I think it would have to be a multiplayer deal for that to work, but it's not impossible. Now here's something that's impossible. John Krupp in the chat: could you see Malkin with the Rangers with Panarin? I don't think the Penguins are trading Malkin. I don't know why this keeps coming out, Peter.
I don't either.
They like to keep Malkin on edge for some reason in Pittsburgh, and they like to make him not think he's they don't want Malkin to think he's secure for some reason. I've noticed this about them. They do this game that they play with him once in a while. I don't know, but I don't think at the end of the day are they going to trade him. I don't think they are. No.
Between the fan base hating Phil Kessel for using his contractually negotiated rights of his limited no trade clause to wanting to jerk Malkin around, I just don't understand what Pittsburgh fans and stuff are thinking. Like, were the 2 cups not worth it to you to have these problems? That's what you get, right? You won back-to-back Stanley Cups. And this is the fallout of it. Sorry, you can't win all the time. It's like when Chicago fans started, grieving, and getting grumpy about their situation. You won 3 cups over 5 years. Was that not enough for you?
Yeah.
Like, this is what happens. They built a winner. It's no longer a winner. It's going to take time. Yeah. Enjoy, remember the good times and be happy you had them. There's teams like Buffalo and Vancouver who have never tasted that in 50 years.
I know.
And the thing, it continues to sound like there's a marriage there between Tyler Myers and Vancouver. And I know that everybody in Vancouver was hoping that the cap recapture penalty would scare them off from Myers, but it continues to sound like that's where he's going to go, and it's just a question of how long and how much.
It does. It really does. And I'm a little surprised by it, I have to say. I don't think that it's. I think you have to realize that there's going to be other teams involved in it, though, too. So I think that there already are other teams talking to Myers as well. I don't think it's just Vancouver. Yeah. Vancouver has a lot of leaks this year for some reason. They came unbelievably close, to getting Tyson Barrie at the draft. I mean, just to the point where, and it wasn't just me. I mean, I reported it, but it wasn't just me. If you went back and listened to it, sorry,
it was a lot of people. Yeah.
I got it. If you went back and listen and watch that on television at all, you would hear at the time I was putting up that I was hearing Tyson Barrie rumors. They were set, McKenzie's on there saying, well, Vancouver's about to make their pick. If they're going to make that pick and not trade it, like it was out there everywhere that pick was going to be part of the deal for Tyson Barrie.
Yeah. And
so we're gonna stop here in a couple minutes here. Just
the one thing I have to say, because it makes a lot of sense that Colorado is shopping Barrie because he's got a year left in his contract. They got Makar. They drafted Byram. He's probably going to be there within a year or two. They have Sam Girard. They have some good young defensemen. And Makar is probably ready to take over as the point guy in the power play for Barrie. But the problem is that Barrie's contract is over $5 million. Now they could retain salary if they wanted to get a good return. But I know that you reported the Leafs might be in on him. It would take some major shuffling to be able to open up that cap space for.
Well, you have to move. Zaitsev and Nylander is what you have to do. If both those guys go. And even then, you have to still deal with Marner, of course, but it would have to be a Marner like $8 million 2-year deal, like you're talking about,
right?
And Zaitsev and Nylander gone, and then you could make that happen, depending on how much they retain, or if they retain anything at all. But I've somebody in Colorado who said the second the Avalanche drafted the defenseman, right off the bat, they said if that defenseman goes, Barrie knows he's gone, and he knew it, and at that point there was no way, because they have the other young defenseman too is coming in, and they don't need Tyson Barrie right now. Tyson Barrie is an interesting guy because he is way better than people realize, I think, and I think that he could go someplace else and be a dangerous player. Like I think that could be maybe the best player Toronto could get.
I've always referred to him as a right-handed Jake Gardiner. He's a double-edged sword. He is really good offensively. He can quarterback a power play, but he's a disaster his own defensively.
He reminds me more of Duncan.
Need to work on that. But the thing about Barrie is, and one thing, if you watch the playoffs in the Calgary Colorado series, what he has figured out is he gets the puck out fast, and that Colorado attack is as fast as it comes in the league. And Barrie, when he's on the ice, boom, it's gone. They're off. And if you want to get in a track meet with the Colorado Avalanche,
that's the case. I mean, he reminds me so much of Duncan Keith early on. That's how highly I think of him. I mean, Duncan Keith, that was the same thing, just all speed, but it took Keith a while to get it together. People think of Keith as like this immediate overnight success. It wasn't the case in Chicago. He was getting scratched.
By this time in his career, I mean, Barrie's, I think, 20.
This is the time when in his career when he was getting it together. You're right, but it wasn't much before this.
And if a team like Toronto is trading for a guy like Barrie, it would have to go hand in hand with an extension. They're not going to trade the players they would have to trade to get them and have them walk away after a year. So that would complicate things in my book.
Yeah, possibly. Well, guys, that's it for now. Monday we'll be back, and it'll be Canada Day. It'll be Happy UFA Day.
Free Agent Frenzy Day.
It'll be Free Agent Frenzy Day. I'll be right here, and I'm probably not going to leave this desk until then. So I'll be right here, and we'll be talking, and we will be doing our best show for you, probably starting somewhere around 10:30, 10 o'clock, somewhere in there, depending on what seems to be going on. But and we'll stay on as long as we have to. And you remember last year, guys, we stayed on a long time.
Yeah, we were there a while
until and even then we didn't stay on long enough to get Tavares to Toronto.
No, we got Tavares. Remember, I jumped. I was at the coffee shop in Toronto and jumped off just as the Tavares announcement was made.
Right, that happened right after we went off the air.
Yeah,
I remember that. Yep, and then you were at the Tavares press conference before you knew it.
That's true.
All right, guys, without the buzz, it is just hockey. Have a great, wonderful weekend. 4th of July weekend, sort of, for people, maybe. I don't know. It depends. It seems like there's a ton of traffic coming to the beach. I'm thinking people are taking next week off for the 4th of July here in America. Remember that the buzz is just hockey. We will talk to you soon.